The wind on the battlements of Winterfell had teeth. It bit through wool and boiled leather and dragon glass, through the thick furs of the free folk and the polished steel of Southron plate. It snarled and keened, an animal sound that made even battle-hardened men glance north as if the wind itself might grow arms and drag them screaming into the dark. Jon Snow stood at the highest parapet he could find, watching that dark. The sky there wasn't truly black. It had a color like old bruises, a swollen purple blue that smothered the stars and crept lower with every passing hour. The torches along Winterfell's outer walls flickered and spat, their flames bowing toward that approaching night as if in fear. Beyond the trenches and the empty fields, snow whispered along the ground in thin, snaking veils, heading south as though eager to be first at the feast. Behind him, dragons moved. They were shapes before they were anything else. Vast, restless shadows that shifted and unfolded, wings unfurling like the opening of storm clouds. Drogon shook himself, shedding ice and cinders, his breath a deep furnace roar that vibrated through the stone beneath Jon's boots. Rhaegal's eyes glowed a molten green, the ridges along his spine crackling as he huffed steaming air into the cold. Daenerys Targaryen stood between them, her silver hair whipped loose under her hood, lashes rimmed with frost, cheeks flushed by wind and anger both. She didn't shiver. Jon wasn't sure she remembered how. "They're late," she said, not taking her eyes off the northern dark. "He's late." Jon followed her gaze. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of even dragon sight, the dead were marching. He could feel them as a weight in his chest, a pressure in the air that made each breath tight and thin. "He's not late," Jon said quietly. "He's patient." She turned her head at that, eyes pale and sharp in the torchlight. "Patience is just another form of cruelty," she said. "Drag it out and let them feel it. Let them be afraid longer." She could have been talking about the Night King. She could have been talking about herself. Jon didn't say either. Instead, he stepped closer, the wind tugging at his cloak. That old impulse rising in him to tell her the truths no one else would. "Men are afraid whether he comes now or an hour from now," Jon said. "The Dothraki, the Northmen, all of them. Fear won't go away if he hurries. Then we'll burn the fear out of them." Her voice had steel in it. He loved her for it, and feared it in equal measure. Torches moved along the courtyard below, orange motes swirling around the hulking shapes of unsullied forming ranks, the loose, ragged clusters of free folk, the lines of northern spearmen stamping their feet to keep blood in their toes. Ghost prowled along the inner wall, white fur nearly glowing, a streak of pale defiance among the dark stone and black mail. Jon's eyes drifted, as they always did, toward the godswood at the heart of the keep. The old weirwood rose like a bone-white hand against the sky, red leaves stirring despite the stillness of the air around them. The tree had always seemed to listen. Tonight, it watched. Somewhere beneath those branches was Bran. "Your brother knows what comes," Daenerys said, following his gaze. Her lip curled just slightly on the word brother. She had never grown used to the tangle of blood and names in the north. "He sees it, doesn't he? He sees something." Jon shook his head. "Pieces, threads. He doesn't always know which one will be pulled. And yet we trust him to be bait," she said. Jon swallowed. "We don't have a choice. We always have a choice." She looked north again. "I chose to come here, to fight their war first, to give up my chance at the throne, for now." That was a choice. He heard the unspoken question. "And what have you given up, Jon Snow?" He thought of bending the knee, of those words in the crypts, choking out the truth about his name and his claim, and how little it mattered with the dead marching. He'd thought the Night King was the only thing that truly mattered. But that had been before he had stood where he was now, looking at a sky with all the stars gone from it, feeling a wrongness creeping south that felt older than kingdoms. There was a scrape of boots on stone behind them. They turned together as Davos Seaworth stepped onto the parapet, cheeks raw and beard crusted with rime. "They're in position, Your Grace," he said, inclining his head first to Daenerys, then dipping it again, less deeply, to Jon. "Dothraki forward, just as you asked. The Red Woman's with them, gods help us. Unsullied behind the trenches. The Northmen behind them. The dragons." His eyes drifted up, and for a moment the hard lines of his weathered face eased, as he took in Drogon's bulk and Rhaegal's curling neck looming over the battlements. "The dragons are ready," Daenerys finished, a faint smile ghosting over her mouth. "We burn him. We burn every corpse he's ever woken. We end this." "Nah. And if he doesn't burn?" Jon asked, because someone had to say it aloud. She looked past him as if he hadn't spoken, to the darkness gathering like a tide. "He'll burn." Davos cleared his throat. "If I may, the crypts are full. Sansa's down there now. Your people, Jon, they're scared, hiding where they think stone and memory will keep them safe." He hesitated. "I'm not sure even the dead will rest easy with him so close." Jon's shoulders tensed. He had argued against the crypts. He had been shouted down by people who had never seen the Night King raise a field of corpses with a single gesture. "He's coming for Bran," Jon said. "For what Bran is. He'll go to the Godswood. That gives us a chance to end it before he has a chance to..." He trailed off, unable to find words large enough for the shape of his fear. "The crypts will be safe enough." Davos gave him a look that said he didn't believe in safe enough, but had run out of better places to put children. "Then I'll get back to the walls," the Onion Knight said. "If this is the last night we stand breathing, I don't mean to spend it talking." He vanished back down the stairs. The wind filled the silence he left behind. Daenerys reached for Jon's hand. Her fingers were cold as steel through her gloves, but his tightened around them anyway. "When this is done," she said, "when he's ash on snow, we will go south. You have my word. We will break Cersei Lannister. We will tear down her Red Keep brick by brick if we must. And if we don't win?" Jon asked. Something flickered in her eyes then, a flash of something raw and human beneath the Queen. "Then there will be nothing left to rule," she said. "Nothing but night. So we win." The horns sounded. Not the short, brassy calls of practiced maneuvers, but a deep, mournful blare that rolled along the walls and down into the courtyards, calling every soul in Winterfell to look north. The dark had reached them. It came as a wall of shadow, thickening the air, blotting the horizon. Snow began to fall in earnest, not in lazy flakes, but in sharp, lancing shards that stung skin and clung to armor. The front ranks of the Dothraki shifted restlessly, horses tossing their heads, sensing something enormous and wrong moving just beyond sight. Between blinks, the world grew dimmer. Daenerys dropped Jon's hand and strode to Drogon, pulling herself up with the ease of long practice, her furs snapping behind her. Rhaegal lowered his head for Jon. His scales felt slick and cold under Jon's glove. The dragon's breath a furnace gust in his face, for all the good that heat did against the creeping cold. "Dracarys," Daenerys whispered, and Drogon roared, fire spilling between his teeth as he launched himself from the wall. Rhaegal followed. The dragon surged into the northern night, wings driving the snow into spirals beneath them. Jon clung to Rhaegal's neck ridges, the world tilting and dropping away. Winterfell shrinking to a pocket of firelight, and stone in a sea of black. Below, on the field, a lone rider emerged. Melisandre walked calmly toward the lines of Dothraki, her red dress a stark slash of color against the snow. The wind caught at her hair and cloak, but the flames stitched into her jewelry never dimmed. A Dothraki Khal rode out to meet her, Arak gleaming dull in the scant light. The witch took his blade in her hands, whispered words in a language older than the North, and the metal caught fire. One by one, the Dothraki Araks flared, lines of orange fire flickering to life across the field. The sight wrung a ragged cheer from the men on the walls, a desperate, disbelieving sound. Jon saw it from above, that fragile lattice of light, those bright, curved blades raised defiantly toward the approaching dark. For one heartbeat, it looked like hope. Then the dark moved. It wasn't like a storm rolling in, or a line of approaching men. It was as if the night itself surged forward, swallowing the snow, swallowing the light. From Jon's vantage in the sky, he saw the flaming Arax plunge into that thickened shadow. They vanished. Not one by one, but in great sweeping bands. The firelights blinked out. Screams rose. Some human, some horse, all torn short. The dark devoured the Dothraki like surf erasing footprints in sand. On the walls of Winterfell, lines of unsullied braced. Free folk gripped spears. Northmen muttered prayers. The fire in the trenches hadn't yet been lit. The plan had been to wait until the dead were nearly upon them. There was no time. Jon felt Rhaegal shudder beneath him as something cold and vast brushed against them. A presence not sensed with eyes or ears, but with something deeper. The hairs on his arms stood up. The dragons screamed, banking. From the heart of that black tide, shapes emerged, pale eyes in a sea of dark. The White Walkers rode at the vanguard, mounted on dead horses whose breath steamed from rotting nostrils, weapons of ice glinting with the faint, sickly light that still reached them. Behind them surged the Whites, a carpet of twisted forms, some in leathers long rotted, others in armor still bright from more recent graves. At their center walked the Night King. He did not hurry. He never did. He moved with the inevitability of a glacier, each footstep spreading frost like veins through the snow. Snowflakes that drifted near him hardened into crystalline shards and split, falling in jagged fragments. His eyes were twin shards of the same ice, reflecting nothing, absorbing everything. From above, he was a small figure in a vast army. Jon's heart knew better. Every breath the living took was borrowed from him now. Dracarys. Daenerys' voice tore through the sky. Drogon plunged, splitting the air with his roar, his jaws opening to spill a torrent of flame. The fire crashed down on the leading ranks of dead in a wave, sweeping soldiers and horses and snow alike into a boiling inferno. For a moment, the army of the dead vanished behind a curtain of flame. Jon guided Rhaegal to wheel around the other flank, adding his own dragon's fire to the storm, carving a river of blazing orange through the massed Whites. Fire lit the sky. The men on the walls shouted as if their throats might break. Then the fire changed. It dimmed, flickering, thinning as if something beneath it was drinking it in. The flame that had been a living, roaring thing a heartbeat ago stretched, wavered, and then, impossibly, began to freeze. Jon saw it happen in patches, tongues of orange stuttering into pale, then blue, then shattering in midair as fragile flickers of crystal. On the ground, where Whites had burned to char and ash, the shapes were already moving again, frost forming over blackened bone, ruined hands clawing through snow and embers alike. The Night King walked through the dragonfire. It curled around him in dying wisps, futile as summer breath against a glacier. For a moment, orange light illuminated his face, carving hollows in the alien plains, glancing off the crown of sharp horn-like ice. He raised his face to the dragons overhead. He lifted one hand. The storm rose. It did not creep in from the north this time. It erupted from around him, a column of whirling snow and ice that speared upward, slamming into Drogon and Rhaegal mid-flight. The dragons shrieked as the world vanished. Jon's vision filled with white, with shards of stinging ice, with winds so fierce it tore his breath from his chest. Rhaegal lurched violently, wings hammered crooked by the sudden gale. Jon clung tight. Somewhere in the blizzard he heard Daenerys cry out. Rhaegal broke free of the worst of it, bursting from the spiraling storm with a panicked roar. Jon twisted in the saddle, eyes streaming, searching for Drogon. For Daenerys. For anything. He saw movement, a darker shape within the maelstrom. Viserion streaked up from below like a bolt loosed from some monstrous bow, tattered wings beating, blue fire leaking from the holes in his throat. The dead dragons slammed into Drogon. Their roars blended into a single unholy sound as they crashed back toward the earth, wings tangled, claws raking. A gout of blue fire met orange in midair. the clash sending a shockwave of scalding and freezing air washing over the battlefield. The two dragons spun end over end, disappearing into the churning dark. "Daenerys!" Jon shouted, voice snatched away by the wind. Snow and ice closed in again, the storm responding to the Night King's subtle gestures below like a living thing. Rhaegal fought it, bellowing, muscles straining, but he was bleeding from a dozen cuts where ice shards had sliced his wings. He struggled toward the south, away from the thickest of the dark. Below, Winterfell was slipping away. The Unsullied had closed ranks before the trenches, shields overlapping. Spears braced. The trenches were lit now, the fire a ring of desperate orange in a sea of blue-gray. Whites hurled themselves into the flames, shrieking as they burned, bodies piling into grotesque bridges that others climbed over. The walls were already heaving with combat, whites clawing up, men and women hacking down, the lines between living and dead dissolving under the press. Jon saw gray-cloaked figures fighting near the main gate, Lyanna Mormont's banner, small and defiant. Her tiny form vanished beneath a tower of undead flesh. Somewhere on the inner wall, Tormund swung his axe in great bloody arcs, his laughter lost in the storm as he dragged whites from the parapet and flung them screaming into the courtyard. The world tilted again. Rhaegal shrieked, one wing buckling completely. They were too low, too close to the walls now. Jon could see faces below, pale ovals upturned. Samwell on the ramparts with a dragon-glass dagger clutched in shaking hands. Gendry at the gate, hammer rising and falling. Brian holding the inner yard with Jaime at her side, his golden hand flashing as he shoved a white from the wall. "Hold!" Jon shouted, though no one could hear him. "Hold!" Rhaegal hit the outer courtyard in a crash of shattered stone and screams. The impact ripped Jon from the saddle. The world became a blur of sky and stone and a shocking, numbing cold as he slammed into packed snow, rolled, struck something hard, and came to rest half-buried. He lay there for a second, winded, staring up as snow and debris drifted down around him. Rhaegal roared somewhere behind him, a short, choking sound abruptly cut off. Jon pushed himself up, every joint screaming. His hand closed on something solid in the snow. Longclaw's pommel, the wolf's head half-buried, silver eyes staring up at him as if in accusation. He staggered to his feet. The courtyard was chaos. The crash had opened a jagged wound in the wall. Stones lay strewn everywhere, bodies pinned beneath them, limbs jutting at wrong angles. Whites swarmed through the breach, shrieking, throwing themselves at anything that moved. The fire in the trenches had guttered, reduced to weak, guttering lines that froze as Jon watched, orange stiffening to brittle crystal. The storm had come with the Night King. Jon saw the door to the Godswood. It stood open, a gap in the chaos, the path beyond it clogged with snow and bodies. He couldn't see the weirwood from here, but he felt it, a tug like a hook in his chest. Bran was there. The Night King was coming there. This was the moment everything had been meant to hinge on. He ran. Whites lunged at him, frozen hands clawing, mouths opening in soundless screams. Longclaw whispered through them, Valyrian steel slicing rot and rime. Black blood steaming briefly on the blade before crusting over. Jon shouldered through, half falling, half running, following that pull. That sense of urgency that drowned out everything else. The fire, the screams, the roar of dragons somewhere overhead. The sudden crack of something enormous splitting. A flash of orange lit the sky, then died as abruptly as a snuffed candle. He burst into the Godswood, lungs burning. The old tree was a ghost in the storm, its white bark streaked with blood from the carved face, its red leaves stirring wildly, though the air beneath the canopy was curiously still. Snow lay thick on the ground, layered over the roots and stones. The world beyond the trees was reduced to a smear of shadow. Sound seemed muffled, as if he'd stepped underwater. Bran sat in his chair before the weirwood, hands folded in his lap, eyes open and distant. Theon Greyjoy stood before him with a broken spear, breath coming in ragged gasps, blood seeping through rent armor, his face a mix of terror and fatalist calm. Between them and the broken gate, The whites had formed a ring. A living wall of dead flesh that did not press forward. They stood in unnatural stillness, heads bowed, as if awaiting something. That something stepped through the archway a heartbeat later. The Night King walked into the Godswood without hurry, as he had walked through Dragonfire, as he had walked out of the ruined wall. Snow hardened beneath his bare feet, ice crackling with each step. The carved face of the weirwood seemed to flinch, red sap dripping more freely from its eyes. Theon flinched too. Then he straightened, drawing himself up, fingers tightening on the splintered spear. "You're a good man, Theon," Bran said, voice flat and distant but still his. "Thank you." Theon's shoulders shook once. He charged. It was a brave charge. It deserved more than it got. The Night King moved faster than any man in armor had a right to. One pale hand caught the spear, shattering it into frost with a snap. Theon stumbled past, bearing his side, and the Night King's other hand plunged through the gap in his armor like a blade. For a moment, Jon thought he'd driven a spear through him, so precise was the motion. Then he saw Theon's eyes go wide, his breath frosting in a burst against the Night King's chest, and the icy limb pulling back slick with red that froze on contact with the air. Theon fell at Bran's feet, blood steaming around him. Jon shouted and lurched forward, but the ring of whites tightened, pressing back suddenly. Skeletal arms and bloated bodies forming a barrier he couldn't hack through fast enough. Longclaw rose and fell, each stroke cutting another dead thing down. But for each that fell, another two surged forward, clutching at him, dragging at his cloak and arms. Teeth snapped near his face. Fingers like frozen iron clawed at his throat. He bellied into them, roaring, desperate, forcing his way toward that still form under the tree. He saw Arya move. He didn't know where she'd been hiding, how she'd slipped past the whites and the storm and the undead generals lining the walls of Winterfell. But suddenly she was there, a flash of leather and gray, feet barely touching the snow as she sprang from the shadows behind the Night King, Valyrian steel dagger glinting in her hand. The Night King had been staring at Bran, his head tilted, just a fraction, as Arya flew toward him, an avenging shadow. He turned. His hand shot back without looking. He caught her by the throat. The dagger stopped inches from his chest, the point hovering over the strange crystalline pattern in his armor. Arya's eyes bulged, her face contorting in shock and fury as those frozen fingers closed around her neck. Her boots scrabbled at the air, snowflakes spinning around her. The Night King's face didn't move. Those blue eyes regarded her as one might regard an insect pinned to a board. Arya's hand opened. The dagger fell. Jon screamed, a hoarse, wordless sound that tore his throat. He hacked down another white, shoving forward, but the ring didn't break. He could see Arya's lips forming a word, a name, maybe his. The Night King squeezed. There was a sharp, sickening crack. Arya's body jerked once, then went limp. He let her drop. She hit the ground with a soft, wet thud, limbs folding in on themselves, the snow around her darkening. For the first time, the Night King looked at Jon. Not across a battlefield, not from the back of a dragon, but directly. Blue eyes met brown through a shifting wall of dead flesh and blowing snow. There was no triumph in them, no hate, only inevitability. He stepped past Arya's body, the whites parting before him like shadow. He stopped in front of Bran. Bran's eyes focused at last. "I saw you," he said quietly. "In the past, in the first long night. In the future, when there is no longer a word for night, because there is no longer a word for day." If the Night King understood, he gave no sign. He reached out, fingers spread. For a heartbeat, Jon thought he would seize Bran as he had seized Arya, that he would choke the life from him, slow and theatrical. But his hand went to Bran's chest instead, resting over his heart. Frost spread from the point of contact, creeping across Bran's skin like living lace. His breath plumed once, twice, then slowed. The veins in his neck darkened, then turned pale. then vanished as a thin layer of ice formed under his skin. His eyes, always so distant, finally filled with something like fear. No, not fear. Recognition. "So that's what you were," Bran whispered, his voice catching as ice crawled into his throat. "You wanted an ending." The Night King pushed. Bran went still. For an instant, the world seemed to hold its breath. Jon felt it, even through the press of whites, even through the madness of battle at his back. It was as if 1,000 birds had stopped mid-wing beat, as if the trees themselves had paused in their slow, endless listening. Then something invisible snapped. It was a sound that wasn't a sound, a sudden lack, like the extinguishing of a vast fire. The air twisted. The red leaves of the weirwood turned brittle at once, shattering into a flurry of crimson shards that tore through the godswood like knives. Men and whites alike cried out as the fragments sliced flesh. Sap froze in the tree's veins, the carved face cracking, its frozen tears splitting. Far away, in every godswood of the north and riverlands and vale, every weirwood shuddered. The old magic that had run through their roots, that had bound ravens and green seers and memory together, recoiled. It slammed into the one place it had been fleeing for weeks now, the still, cold heart of the being who had just slain its last favored vessel. The Night King took it. He drew the shuddering wave of memory and sight and song into himself like a man inhaling. The air around him froze solid for a yard in every direction, snow suspended as glittering shards. His eyes flared brighter for a moment, blue light spilling from them in thin lines like cracks in an ice lake. Jon saw it, and in that moment he understood something both simple and terrible. The Night King had never truly been hunting Bran as a man hunts a stag. He had been hunting an empty throne. Now, he sat upon it. The white surged. The ring pressed inward, hurling Jon back, burying him under a tide of clawing hands and snapping teeth. He went down under the weight, long claw torn from his grip, the cold wrapping around him like a second skin. A boot caught his ribs. A dead man's elbow smashed into his jaw. For a moment, there was nothing but pressure and pain and cold. He thought, this is it. Then, the world shook. Something huge collided with the godswood, snow erupting in a blinding wave as branches snapped and trunks cracked. A dragon's roar split the storm, ragged but furious. Jon felt the weight on him lighten as bodies were flung aside, white scattering under blows that cracked bone and stone alike. Strong hands grabbed him under the arms and hauled him up. "On your feet, bastard," Sandor Clegane snarled, shoving Jon upright. His burned face was streaked with soot and blood, eyes wild. "You die when there's nowhere left to run, not before." Behind the Hound, Brienne and a knot of Winterfell's last defenders formed a desperate, sagging line. Podgy Podrick, bleeding from a cut at his scalp. Grey Worm, expression unreadable beneath a smear of ash. Davos, sword in hand, though it was clear he'd rather be holding a ladle. Above them, Drogon burst through the trees. He was wounded, great rents torn in one wing, half his scales blackened where blue fire had kissed them, but he was alive. He crashed into the godswood like a living storm, his claws chewing furrows from the frozen earth, his bulk smashing whites into paste. His mouth opened, and for a moment, real flame erupted again, scorching a path through the dead. The Night King turned to face him. The dragon's fire washed over him a second time. This time, the Night King lifted his hands as if to embrace it. The flames curled around his palms, guttered, and froze. Frost raced backward along Drogon's breath, seizing his tongue, his jaws, his throat. Drogon choked on his own fire. His roar stuttered into a strangled gargle as a sheet of ice formed over his tongue, down his throat, across his chest. His limbs thrashed, claws raking deep gouges in the frozen ground. Ice crawled along the membrane of his wounded wing, turning it opaque and brittle. In seconds, the dragon's movements slowed, then stopped, his great amber eyes glazing over as frost veined them. Daenerys clung to the spines behind his head. She had no helm. Her silver hair whipped wildly as she struggled to draw herself up, one hand going to the hilt of a dragonglass sword at her hip. Her eyes locked on the Night King. There was no fear in them, only hatred, bright and shattering. "You will not have him," she hissed, voice ragged. "You will not have my world." She leaped. For a heartbeat, Jon saw her as the stories had always promised she would be. The Dragon Queen, breaker of chains, leaping from the back of a dying dragon to strike down death itself. Her sword flashed, black glass catching fractured light as she drove it toward the Night King's heart. He did not catch her by the throat. He caught the blade. His hand closed around the jagged edge of dragonglass. Frost raced along it, spiderwebbing the obsidian with cracks. The sword shattered in Daenerys' grip, fragments spinning away. Shards of black plunged into the snow, hissing, freezing. One slashed across her cheek, leaving a thin, dark line that froze immediately, a ruby streak trapped in ice. The momentum of her leap carried her forward. The Night King turned, shifting his weight, placing himself behind her. An arm of impossible cold wrapped around her waist. Another hand pressed to the small of her back. For a sick, dizzy moment, Jon thought he might be about to break her like a twig. Instead, he turned her, setting her on her knees in the snow before him. One hand clamped between her shoulder blades, forcing her to bow. She strained against it, muscles standing out in her neck, breath coming in ragged bursts. "Look at me," she snarled, trying to twist back to face him. "Look at me when you kill me." The Night King's eyes shifted. For the first time, those blue depths held something like interest. Daenerys met that gaze with all the fury and grief and stubborn love she had left. Jon saw his own reflection there for an instant. Small, insignificant, struggling in the edges of some vast, icy sea. The Night King lowered his hand. He didn't break her neck, didn't plunge a hand through her chest as he had with Theon. He simply touched the side of her head, fingers splayed lightly against her temple. Daenerys convulsed. Her scream tore through the godswood, through the walls of Winterfell, out across the fields where whites and livings still tore at each other. Snow spiraled upward in a sudden vortex around her. Her eyes rolled white, then blue, then white again, her pupils dilating until they swallowed all color. Images flashed behind those eyes, too fast for Jon to see, but he felt them in the air like lightning. Moiraine's pyramids burning, Astapor's chains shattering, her brother's crown of gold melting. A red door, a house with a red door, a child's laugh in a language he didn't know. Her memories, her identity. The Night King took those as he had taken Bran's. When he released her, she collapsed forward onto the frozen ground, hair fanning around her like spilled silver. She did not move. The Night King straightened. He had taken the last living dragon's mind and the last Greenseer's sight into himself. He had walked through fire and frozen it. He had broken the plan that had been forged since old Nan's tales first bent around winter fires. The living were out of time. "Fall back!" Jon shouted, voice raw. "Fall back! Get to the keep! To what? To the walls already overrun. To the crypts full of bones." Something in the Night King's posture shifted. He lifted his arms. Not in a taunt, as on the shores of Hardhome. Not spread wide in theatrical mockery. He raised them slowly, deliberately, as if weighing every inch. In the courtyard beyond the Godswood, where Drogon lay half submerged in frost, men and women who had fallen in the fighting stirred. Theon's hand twitched first, fingers scraping lines in the snow. His body jerked, then arched, then pushed itself up. Eyes now a hollow, luminescent blue. The blood that had spilled from him was frozen solid, cracking as he moved. His mouth hung open, breath steaming in one final, soundless protest that wasn't his. Under the weirwood, Bran opened his eyes. They were not Bran's eyes. They were the Night King's eyes, blue and depthless, staring at Jon from a face he had known since boyhood. Something ancient peered out through that young skin, muscles moving in cold, curious mimicry as Bran. No, the thing that had been Bran tilted his head. Jon took a step back, the world tilting around him. "Go!" Davos barked, grabbing his arm. "There's nothing here for us now, lad. We can't win here. Not today." "We can't win anywhere," Jon said. Not sure if he was speaking to Davos or himself. Maybe not. Davos' grip tightened. "But we can run, while there's still somewhere to run to." "Nay, and I Kishana and Gaiden were." They ran. They ran as Winterfell died. The retreat was not ordered. It was not honorable. It was raw survival, ugly and frantic, men and women scrambling over bodies, shoving through gates, fleeing down half-collapsed corridors with whites snapping at their heels. The banners of House Stark and Targaryen, of Mormont and Glover and Karstark, fell into the snow and were trampled under boots both living and dead. In the crypts, stone shook as the ancient dead stirred, called by the same cold summons that had raised fresh corpses on the field above. Whites clawed their way out of tombs, flinging centuries of dust and carved stone aside. Stark lords in rotted finery staggered into the dim passageways. There were screams in the dark that cut off too suddenly. Jon did not go down there. He fled with the others to the inner gate, through the breach Rhaegal's fall had torn, to the open air and the road south. Rhaegal's broken shape lay slumped against the wall, one eye frozen open, utterly still. Ghost ran at Jon's heels, his white fur matted with blood that steamed briefly, then hardened into dark ice clumps. They did not look back until the walls of Winterfell were little more than gray teeth on the horizon. When they did, they saw the last of its light go out. Flame winked away from the towers, snuffed as if pinched between icy fingers. The fortress that had stood for thousands of years, that had seen kings and rebels and boy lords come and go, sank into shadow. Above it, a new light rose, a faint, cold radiance that spilled from the heart of the godswood, blue and alien, staining the low clouds. Snow began to fall heavier. It did not stop. They rode south into a world that was already beginning to change. The first wave of ice took the north in a single night. Villages that had sent their strongest to Winterfell woke to silence. The wind fell still. The air grew heavy. Frost crawled up the insides of windows, forming strange, branching patterns that looked almost like eyes if stared at too long. Children pressed their noses to the glass and watched the horizon grow dark. The dead reached them by morning. Jon and the remnants of their host, what was left of unsullied and Northmen and free folk, scattered Dothraki who had somehow ridden out of the black, pushed their horses as hard as they could toward White Harbor. They rode through hamlets half abandoned, doors hanging open, fires gone out mid-meal, bowls of porridge frozen solid on tables. Sometimes there were bodies. Men and women and children curled in their beds, eyes wide, frost on their lashes. Sheep in their pens, tongues frozen mid-bleat. Dogs rigid in the snow, teeth bared. Fur rimed with crystals. Sometimes there was nothing at all. No tracks in the snow, no sign of struggle. Just silence and a feeling of being watched by something that didn't need eyes. At the King's Road crossroads, they met Sansa Dothraki. She had refused to go into the crypts. When the dead rose, she had fled with a handful of guards and servants through a sally port she remembered from childhood, leading a knot of screaming small folk in her wake. When they found her, her hair was half unbound, cheeks raw from cold and tears, cloak torn. "Arya?" she asked before anything else, spotting Jon on his weary horse. "Bran?" Jon didn't answer fast enough. Sansa understood. Something in her face hardened, a new layer of frost forming over old grief. She did not scream. She did not fall. She simply straightened. The last fragile softness burned away, leaving a core of iron. "Then we have to keep the rest alive," she said. "For them, for what they died for." Jon almost told her that he wasn't sure what they died for anymore, that the plan had failed, that the enemy they'd hoped to kill had instead become something worse. But he saw too many faces turn toward them. Too many eyes full of that brittle, shivering hope that kept feet moving when all sense demanded they lie down and let the snow bury them. He nodded instead. They made White Harbor by dusk. The city's harbor was already icing around the edges, the water thick and slushy beneath the hulls of ships. Manderley banners hung heavy with snow. Their flapping slowed to lethargic twitches. The great gates opened for them not because they were expected, but because the watchmen on the walls saw the dead behind them. The whites came loping down the King's Road, moving faster now that the sun, what little of it was left, had slipped behind a wall of cloud. They flowed over fields and frozen streams in a dark, crawling mass. Inside White Harbor's walls, the city was a chaos of panicked humanity. Fishmongers, maids, sailors in threadbare wool, red-faced merchants, small children clutching cloth dolls whose painted eyes had cracked from the cold. All jostled and shouted, pressed against one another in lines that led nowhere. The docks were a forest of masts, rigging creaking under weight of frost, crews shouting as they tried to ready ships that weren't meant to sail in a solidifying sea. Lord Wyman was dead, John learned. He had collapsed 3 days earlier when the cold first beamed, his heart giving out. His grandson, young Wylis, was trying to command the city, his face pale and stricken. He met them in the castle hall, voice cracking as he offered what aid he could. Aid wasn't what they needed. They needed escape. Any ship that can sail must sail, Sansa said, standing before the high table as if it were the council chamber at Winterfell. Her voice was steady, firm. Fill them with children, with those who cannot fight, old men, pregnant women. Anyone who can hold a sword will stay and buy them time. Buy them time for what? Davos asked quietly beside Jon. For the dead to gain a foothold in Essos as well? Sansa's jaw tightened. For them to run far enough that perhaps they'll die in their beds instead of on their knees. That's not the kind of hope that wins wars. It's the only kind we have left. Daenerys did not sit at the high table. She sat on a low stool by the fire, hands limp in her lap, eyes unfocused. The cut on her cheek had not healed. It was rimmed with frost, the skin around it pale and bloodless. When people spoke to her, she blinked slowly, as if dragging herself up from somewhere very far away. "Your Grace?" Grey Worm murmured once, kneeling beside her. "The men need orders." She looked at him as if she did not know the words he'd spoken. Somewhere behind her eyes, something flickered, a shadow passing across a frozen lake. "The dead are coming," she said simply. "They don't need orders." Jon watched her for a long time. He remembered the girl who had walked into a pyre and come out unburnt, a newborn dragon clinging to her. He remembered the queen who had stood on the walls of Meereen and watched as her enemies' ships burned. He remembered the woman who had offered him her hand in a cave of dragonglass, who had said she would fight for those who could not fight for themselves. That woman had been touched by something colder than any fire. "I need you with me," he said later, when the council had broken up, men scattering to their doomed tasks. He knelt before her, taking her hands in his. They were no warmer than the stones under their knees. "We still have dragons." He stopped. They did not. Only Viserion remained, and he was no longer theirs. "Jon," she said softly. Her eyes focused on him for a moment. There was a strange light in them now, like ice catching starlight. It made his skin crawl. "You're a good man," she said, echoing Bran to Theon, though she did not know it. "You always have been. That's why this hurts you so much." "What does?" She smiled faintly, sadly. "Living in a world that doesn't care if good men win." He wanted to tell her that the world cared, that it had to, that all the stories, all the songs, all the prayers had to matter. Outside, a horn blew, a long, low note from the sea. Ships leaving harbor. Jon stood. "We get them aboard," he said. "We hold the walls as long as we can. We go to Dragonstone after. King's Landing. Anywhere that's not frozen solid." "King's Landing," Daenerys repeated slowly, tasting the words. "Cersei, the throne." "It doesn't matter," Jon said, the words harsher than heat meant. "None of that matters now. But it does, she said, and her eyes gleamed with something he couldn't read. He's marching south. He will not stop at Winterfell, or here or the Neck. He will go to the places of power, to the dragon's home, to Aegon's city, to the Red Keep. Nani, Gandian de Rosso. She tilted her head, listening to something Jon couldn't hear. He remembers them now, she whispered. He remembers everything. The second wave of ice took the Neck and the Riverlands. They sailed. White Harbor vanished behind them into the dark, a smudge of stone and firelight on a shore that was already changing. Jon stood at the prow of the ship that carried him, hand gripping the frozen rail. Ghost pressed against his leg, whining softly as he watched the coast slide by. The sea slushed around them, thick as porridge. Crews cursed as they hacked at the ice forming along hulls and oars, hands split and bleeding from cold. Children huddled under tarps that flapped sluggishly in the still air, their breath forming ghostly plumes. Somewhere on another ship, a baby wailed, thin and reedy, the sound swallowed quickly by the muffled world. On the shore, the forests of the north stiffened. Trees that had stood for centuries, their roots deep in old, wet soil, froze hard. Branches drooped under sudden weight. The swamps of the Neck hardened, secret paths and bogs locked in ice. The towers of Moat Cailin stood like black teeth in a jaw of glass. Whites flowed around them. The dead did not need roads. They did not need paths or fords. They walked across frozen rivers and marched straight through once impassable reeds and suck mud. Pale eyes burned in the shadows beneath bare branches. When they came to Moat Cailin, they did not bother to find weak points in its defense. They simply climbed, hands and feet finding purchase in cracks and crevices, bodies piling, weight dragging others up until the walls were lost under a crawling mass. The last crannogmen were nothing more than a brief flurry of arrows and spears, a flicker of fire on the ice, then silence. At the Twins, the Green Fork froze over. Lord Edmure Tully had abandoned his castle for River Run, believing stone walls and a river would save his people. Walder Frey's surviving brood had holed up in their towers, doors barred, crossbows leaned beside loopholes. They watched the river with growing horror as the current slowed, then stopped, frost creeping from both banks until the water became a solid sheet. When the dead came, they walked across the ice as if it were packed earth. The Freys loosed bolts that shattered on breastplates rimed with frost. They poured boiling oil that steamed and spat and then hardened, black and glassy, over white hands that simply kept climbing. In the end, the Twins fell in less than a day, their towers becoming larders of fresh corpses for the army below. The ships reached Dragonstone grimy with frost and despair. The ancient fortress rose from the sea like the skeleton of a dragon, black stone slick with ice. Snow clung to its carved gargoyles, giving them the appearance of sleeping beasts. The great causeway was treacherous with frost. More than one refugee slipped, bones cracking on stone. The beach where Jon had first seen Daenerys stride through the surf was a solid, glassy expanse now, waves frozen mid-crash. They made Dragonstone a way station. From there, they sent ravens south and east to King's Landing, warning Cersei that the dead had broken the north. To Old Town, telling the maesters that the long night was no longer just words on a page. To Bravos and Pentos and Volantis, begging ships and food and any magic their red priests still believed they possessed. Some ravens never reached their destination. Some turned back mid-flight, buffeted by winds that grew stranger and more erratic. The sky itself seemed lower now, the clouds hanging heavy, pressing down, a weight that made men hunch their shoulders without realizing. Others made it. In King's Landing, Cersei Lannister read the scroll with a faint smile. She held the parchment between thumb and forefinger as if it might stain her, and her eyes flicked over the neat script bearing Jon Snow's signature and Sansa Stark's seal. The words spoke of defeat and retreat, of the Night King walking through Dragonfire, of Winterfell and White Harbor fallen. "They expect us to weep for them," she said lightly, letting the parchment flutter from her fingers onto the map table in the Tower of the Hand. The painted river lines and carved lions and wolves stared up blindly. They expect us to open our gates and beg to share their doom. Qyburn shifted at her shoulder, fingers steepled. They expect you to be human, Your Grace, he said mildly. That is their first mistake. Euron Greyjoy laughed from where he sprawled in a chair, boots up on the table, one hand wrapped around a goblet of dark red wine. Let the snow have them, he drawled. Patches on his coat rhymed with salt and frost from his last voyage. The North has always been too big for its britches, telling tales about honor as if that feeds bellies. Let their honor freeze in their throats. We have walls. We have food. We have the Golden Company. He lifted his cup. We have me. She smiled at him, the way a woman smiles at a mostly obedient dog. We also have wildfire, she said. And the southern sun. The dead are snow and meat. They will rot under our skies like any other corpses. The long night was said to cover the whole world, Your Grace, Qyburn murmured. In the oldest accounts. She turned her head just enough that he could see the sharpness in her gaze. This is not the world of old tales, she said. It is my world. And in my world, the dead stay buried. Nani? No. Jaime stood at the far end of the table, the golden hand she'd given him resting on the painted sea. He had ridden south ahead of the refugees, guilt dogging his heels, leaving Winterfell in flames behind him. His face was drawn, more lined than even the last time Cersei had truly looked at him. They will come, he said softly. They don't tire. They don't need rest or food. What they took at the Wall and at Winterfell, at White Harbor, they will bring with them. Every soldier we send north to slow them will end up marching back at their head. Me. Cersei's jaw tightened. Then we don't send men north. Let the North and its wolves bleed them. Let the dragons burn them if there are dragons left. We will bar our gates and wait. When they break themselves on the walls of this city, then we will see if wildfire burns them better than dragonflame. Your Grace, Qyburn said, there are other possibilities. He nodded toward the high windows of the tower. Beyond them, the sky over King's Landing was still blue, though a little washed out, the sunlight thinner. It painted the red roofs and white stone in colors that were almost normal. The streets bustled with people who still thought of winter as a mild nuisance, something that happened to other kingdoms. What possibilities, she asked. When fire meets cold so extreme it devours it, Qyburn said, eyes bright. Something new is born. We saw a hint of it in the report from Winterfell, the flames freezing, hanging in the air. If we were to capture a sample of this enemy or even a fragment of the force that animates them, his tongue flicked briefly over his lips. Imagine what such power could do, harnessed properly. Not just to protect this city, but to extend your reach beyond any king or queen before you. Jaime stared at him in disbelief. You would bring one of those things here? He asked, voice rough. One of those monsters, into this city, where our children sleep. Cersei's gaze flicked to him, then away, the smallest flinch betraying the word children. Our children are gone, she said flatly. This city remains. The throne remains. Her fingers curled around the back of her chair as if it were a sword hilt. And I will do whatever I must to keep it. Jaime opened his mouth, then closed it. He had ridden south to try and save her from herself. Instead, he'd found that there was nothing left to save. The third wave of ice reached Dragonstone and the Trident. From Dragonstone's battlements, Jon and Davos watched the sea change. It didn't happen all at once. There was no single moment where water turned to stone. Instead, every morning there was a little more ice clinging to the rocks, a little less swell in the waves. Packs of floating, jagged shards drifted closer, colliding with dull, grinding sounds. The dragons carved on the castle walls grew slick with frozen spray. The tunnels beneath the keep, where once heat had seeped from the earth's heart, cooled. The great painted table where Aegon had laid conquest plans sat under a drift of frost that no fire entirely dispelled. Daenerys drifted through those days like a wraith, sometimes vanishing into the Dragonmont, where the last warmth lingered, sometimes standing on the highest tower, eyes fixed north, following something only she could see. "Is there anything left of her?" Sansa asked once, joining Jon at the parapet. He shook his head. "She was never really ours," he said. "Not entirely. She was always half in some other world. She thought it was the world of her birthright, the world of thrones and dragons." He swallowed. "He's taken her into his world instead." "You still love her?" Sansa said, not as a question. "Yes." "Then use that," she said. "If there's any part of her that still fights him, it will be through you." He wanted to believe that. He wasn't sure he did. When the ice finally reached Dragonstow's shores, it did so in a single terrible night. The sea around the island went from sluggish to solid between dusk and dawn, a faint cracking carrying through the walls as ice plates ground together. Men on watch reported seeing something vast move under the new frozen surface, a shadow that spanned the bay, circling once, twice, then heading south again. They had no time left. "We can't stay here," Davos said, slamming his hand flat on Aegon's map table. "If they can cross water now, this place is a trap, not a refuge. We need to be where there are more men to stand in their way, more stone between us and them." "King's Landing," Tyrion said. He sat hunched in a chair by the fire, a cup of wine untouched in his hand. His beard was unkempt. His scar looked white against his chilled skin. "There is food there," he went on. "Walls, wildfire, armies, and Cersei," Sansa said. "She'll never let half the North through her gates. She'd see us all die on the road before she risks feeding mouths she doesn't intend to keep." "Then we give her what she wants," Tyrion said, eyes glittering. "We give her a way to survive what's coming. A way that only works if she keeps other breathing bodies between herself and the dead." Davos frowned. "What way is that?" Tyrion smiled without humor. "Leverage," he said. They sailed again, this time not fleeing the dead but racing them. South, the weather was still, not warm, never that, but less deadly. Snow fell only occasionally. The sea remained mostly liquid, though streaks of slush floated on its surface, and now and then a thin skin of ice formed in sheltered coves. Fishermen in the Stormlands complained of their catches thinning. Vines in the Reach wilted under unexpected frosts. The people of King's Landing drew their cloaks tighter and cursed the northern winds. They did not feel the night creeping in until it was nearly upon them. The fourth wave came with a sky that would not brighten. The dead broke the Trident without stopping. The last of the River Lords made their stand there, on the same banks where Robert Baratheon had once shattered the royal army, where Rhaegar's rubies had spilled into the shallows. Banners of Tully and Frey and Blackwood and Mallister snapped in a wind that smelled of ice and rot. They had no dragons. They had no Greenseers. They had only men. It was not enough. When the Night King reached the ford, the river was already sludging, chunks of ice bobbing on its surface. The men who had marched with Jon at Winterfell, who had seen him die once and return, who had believed in him as the prince that was promised, were nearly all gone now. Those that remained fought with a weary fury, as if trying to carve some meaning into the last hours of their lives. Jon was not among them. He was still on the sea when the last living force on the Trident died. By the time his ships rounded Duskendale and the high white walls of King's Landing's harbor came into view, the sky above the capital had dimmed to an odd bruised twilight. The sun was a pale disk behind a gauze of cloud, light thin and gray. The city was on edge. Refugees clogged the roads leading to the gates, campfires sending up feeble coils of smoke. The smell of unwashed bodies and fear lay thick over the outlying fields. Men in gold cloaks patrolled the walls in doubled numbers, their breath visible in the air. Above the Red Keep, the royal banner with its golden lion still flew, rippling sluggishly in the listless breeze. Cersei watched the approaching fleet from her balcony. "The wolves come to the lion's den," she said. "How sweet. They bring knowledge," Qyburn said at her elbow. "If nothing else. And mouths," Euron grunted, scowling. "Let them rot outside the walls." "They bring dragons," Jaime said quietly. Cersei's lips tightened. "One dragon," she said. and that dragon has already fallen once. The gates opened for Jon and his companions only after hours of tense negotiation. Ravens flying back and forth between ships and castle, ink freezing in inkwells as scribes worked in hastily warmed chambers. In the end, it was Tyrion who persuaded her. He walked into the throne room alone. The last time he had stood there, he had killed his father and fled. Now he walked under the shadow of the Iron Throne again, boots echoing on the cold stone. The dragon skulls in the darkness above rhymed with frost. Cersei waited on the throne, crown askew on her short hair, wine cup in hand. "You have some nerve," she said when he stopped at the base of the steps. "Coming back here, bringing them with you." "I've always had nerve," Tyrion said. "It's wits I rely on now." "Wits didn't save you from father's crossbow." "No," Tyrion said. "They saved the realm from Joffrey instead." She smiled thinly. "Tell me why I shouldn't have your head struck off and mounted on the gate as a reminder that traitors don't get second chances." "Because you like winning," Tyrion said. "And you like winning more than you hate me." Her eyes narrowed. "Go on." "The Night King has taken Winterfell, White Harbor, the Neck, the Trident," Tyrion said, ticking the names off on his short fingers. "The North is gone. The Riverlands are gone. The Vale hides in its mountains. But the dead will climb them in time. The Stormlands and Dorne will be last. But last is not the same as safe." He lifted his gaze, meeting hers. "He's coming here. We have walls," Cersei said. "We have food. You have wildfire," Tyrion said. "Enough to burn half the city. Enough to kill hundreds of thousands of your own subjects along with the dead. A fitting end for your reign, perhaps." Her jaw clenched. He took a breath. "You could bar your gates and let the dead crash against them until either you starve or you drown them in green fire," he said. "Or you could let us in, and we can make this city a knife pointed at their heart." "How?" The word was skeptical, but there was a thread of curiosity in it. "Drogon is wounded," Tyrion said, "but not dead. We can use him, if Daenerys can still reach him. We use the wildfire not as a last resort, but as a weapon of first strike. We line the fields before the city with pits of it. We lure the dead in, then ignite it under their feet. We bring every maester, every red priest, every hedge wizard who can still lift a hand, and we find a way to make dragonfire and wildfire burn cold enough that even he cannot walk through it unscathed." "And if that fails?" she asked. "Then we die," Tyrion said simply. "But we do it together, and we do it with the full strength of this city of your rule. And if, by some chance, we hurt him, if we even crack his armor, we are closer to killing him here than we would be anywhere else." Cersei's fingers drummed on the arm of the throne. "You always did like impossible odds," she said. "They're the only kind that make for good stories." Her eyes flicked to the high windows, where the light was already fading, though it was barely past midday. "Let them in," she said at last. "Under guard, only as many as we can feed. The rest can camp outside the walls and pray to whatever gods still listen that we hold." The fifth wave of ice broke on the walls of King's Landing. They came at dusk. The sky had spent the day dimming, the pale sun crawling sluggishly through a band of thin cloud, casting weak light over a city gone quiet. The usual cries of fishmongers and street hawkers were muted. Fires burned in braziers at every corner, the flames thin and blue at their edges. On the walls, men who had once jeered at Northmen's tales of winter squinted into a twilight that felt heavier than any they'd known. They saw nothing at first. Then the temperature dropped. Breath crystallized instantly on exhalation, hanging in the air as frozen fog. Tears froze on cheeks. The stones underfoot creaked and cracked as water in their seams solidified. Men coughed, the moisture in their lungs seizing into stabbing shards. The wind died. The silence that followed was total. In that silence, a sound arose. A faint, high keening, like metal being drawn over glass. It grew, thin and piercing, until it sank bone deep, setting teeth on edge. Shapes appeared at the northern edge of the city's view. They were not torches. There was no flicker of orange in the approaching darkness. Only a crawling, shifting mass of gray and blue and black, rippling over the fields, filling the hollows and rising over the low hills, swallowing fences and farmhouses alike. The dead had come to the capital of men. Jon stood on the wall beside Jaime Lannister and Grey Worm, ghost pressed against his thigh, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Below them, the fields before the city had been prepared. Pits of oil and wildfire, layered trenches, spikes. The outermost rings were a patchwork of crusted green where test ignitions had scoured the ground. "How many?" Jaime asked hoarsely. "Too many," Jon said. The gates were barred. The streets behind them were full of fear. Sansa had taken charge of rationing in the city, her sharp tongue and colder eyes bringing order where chaos had threatened to break out. Tyrion ran between pyromancers and unsullied commanders in gold cloaks, shuffling pieces on a board that seemed increasingly irrelevant. Daenerys had not left Drogon's side. The dragon lay in the great square before the sept of Baelor's blackened, blasted ruin, his massive head resting on the stone, breath slow and shallow. Ribs showed stark under his scaled skin. His wounds had never fully healed, frost clinging stubbornly to the torn wing. Sometimes his eyes opened. When they did, they were not the pure molten gold they'd once been. Threads of pale blue veined his pupils, like cracks in glass. Daenerys stroked his snout, murmuring in a language no one else knew. Whether she spoke to the dragon or to the thing that had taken root in her mind, none could say. Jon had tried to speak to her again before they took the walls. "Come with us," he'd said. "We need you. We need your strength, your fire." She had smiled at him, a slow, sad thing. "I gave those once," she said, "to people who cheered and sang my name, to people who begged and betrayed and burned." Her hand had tightened on Drogon's scales. "Fire is nothing here, Jon. Only ice matters. If you believe that, then he's already won." "He has won," she said simply. "He won when he was made. He won when men first forgot what winter truly meant. All we're doing now is choosing how we lose." He had no answer to that. On the walls, a horn sounded. Not the horns of King's Landing's watchmen. A different sound. Fuller. Older. It rolled over the city like the roar of something vast rousing from sleep. The sound went through Jon's bones. It wasn't like the thin, reedy blast of a city watch horn, nor the bellowing war horns of the north. It was deeper, older. It rolled along the battlements and down into the streets, through stone and flesh alike. Vibrating teeth and ribs, and something in the back of the mind that remembered dark forests and nights with no word for morning. Men on the wall flinched. Some dropped to a knee, hands clapped over their ears. Ghosts snarled, backing away from the crenellation, fur bristling, yellow eyes wide. "That's not ours," Jaime muttered beside Jon, one hand going to his sword. "That's Euron," Grey Worm said flatly. The horn. Another blast, longer, shuddered through the air. Below, in the great square before the ruins of the Sept, Euron Greyjoy stood bareheaded atop a hastily built wooden platform, cloak flapping in the thin wind. In his hands was a horn unlike any Jon had seen, black, ridged, banded in gold and strange glyphs that hurt the eyes to look upon. Smoke curled from its mouth as if it had been pulled from a fire and not a chest. Qyburn stood at his side, hands tucked into his sleeves, eyes gleaming with hungry fascination. "Remember what I told you," the former maester murmured. 3 blasts bends the beast. It will cost you, but..." Euron grinned through blackened teeth. He already had the look of a man too far gone to turn back. "Worth every breath," he rasped. "If I get to ride a dragon before the world freezes." He raised the horn again. The second blast was worse. It clawed along the spine, set nails digging into wood, made mothers clutch crying children in the streets. Smoke poured thicker from the horn's mouth, greenish and foul, coiling around Euron's face. His eyes bulged briefly, then reddened, veins bursting in the whites. Skin blackened in spiderweb patterns along his neck, spreading with each heartbeat. On the square stones below, Drogon stirred. The dragon's head lifted an inch. Frost cracked along his snout. His pupils narrowed. Deep in his chest, something rumbled. A sound halfway between a growl and a question. Daenerys jerked as if struck. She had been sitting with one hand on Drogon's muzzle, staring north. Now her back arched, eyes going wide. The cut on her cheek flared red, then blue. Threads of frost spreading outward from it like veins. Naife. Her breath caught. Kalaka. Her own voice sounded distant to her ears. The horn's third blast came as a scream. It ripped Euron apart from the inside. The Ironborn staggered, dropping to one knee, blood spraying from his nostrils and mouth. His skin splitting along those spiderweb lines, his lungs charred in his chest. His last laugh was a wet gargle drowned in smoke. When he toppled forward, he was little more than a blackened husk, fingers still twitching toward the horn as if loath to let go. The horn did not fall. It hung in the air for a heartbeat, smoke coiling thicker, forming shapes that were not shapes. Wings, perhaps, or antlers, or the root tangles of ancient trees. The glyphs along its bands glowed, first gold, then green, then an ugly glacial blue. The sound did not stop either. It turned inward. It plunged down through the stone of King's Landing, through the cold earth beneath, through the thin, shuddering skein of whatever old magic still clung to the land. It traveled along the veins of wildfire hidden in vaults and cellars, along the old dragon tunnels under the Red Keep, along the ghost of Aegon's conquest. It found Drogon. It found something else as well. The Night King felt the horn's call as a tug at the edge of his new senses. He walked at the head of his army, each step turning the ground beneath his feet to glassy frost. He did not need to look up to see the walls of King's Landing. Bran's stolen sight showed him the city from 100 angles at once, through the eyes of ravens perched on chimneys, through the dreams of fearful children, through the echo of dragon memories in the stone. Now a new thread tugged at him, a narrow, shrieking line of power, dark with blood price, connecting the square where the great black dragon lay to the cold mind moving south. He turned a fraction of his attention along it. For a heartbeat, he saw as Daenerys saw. Through the blur of tears, the sharp lines of the square, the blur of men and women in armor running, shouting, the looming bulk of Drogon's head beside her. For another heartbeat, he felt what Drogon felt. The drag of cold in tired lungs, the ache in wounded wings, the echo of a bond formed in fire and blood, now being yanked by something foreign and cruel. He took the horn's call into himself. The smoke pouring from the horn's mouth changed. It went pale, then colorless, then sharp as broken glass. It shot upward like a spear, pierced the sky, vanished into the low clouds. The sound cut off in a snap. The horn fell at last, clattering to the platform. Qyburn flinched back, eyes suddenly wide with more fear than curiosity. The smell of charred meat and bile thick in his nose. Euron's corpse jerked once, twice, then lay still. Remarkable, Qyburn whispered, even as he took another step away. On the wall, the last echoes of that impossible sound died, leaving a silence that felt wounded. Jon sucked in a breath that seared his lungs with cold. What in the name of every bloody god was that? Jaime demanded. Something men should have left buried, Davos said on Jon's other side. His face was ashen, the fingers of his missing hand flexing against the stump as if they still itched. We've woken too many old things already. Look, Grey Worm said. The dead had stopped. The crawling mass that had been flowing over the fields toward the city like spilled ink had halted all at once. Whites froze mid-stride. Some toppled forward and lay where they fell. Others stood hunched, heads bowed. Pale blue eyes flickered in their sockets, dimming, brightening. dimming again like coals in a dying fire. The White Walkers at their rear sat motionless on their dead horses, frost steaming from their blades. At their center, the Night King stood still as carved ice. For a heartbeat, Jon let himself hope. Did that stop them? Jaime asked, squinting. Did that damned idiot's horn? The Night King raised his head. The blue light in his eyes flared, brighter than before. Bright enough that even at this distance, Jon saw twin pinpricks of color cut through the dimming dusk. The dead stirred. They did not resume their mindless forward rush. They rearranged. Lines formed where there had been only swarm. Ranks. Columns. The Whites stepped into place with jerky, marionette motions that smoothed as they settled, becoming almost soldier-like in their unity. Shields, splintered, frozen, scavenged from fallen foes, came up. Spears lowered. Those with no weapons picked up jagged stones, broken bits of wood, bones. 7 hells, Jaime breathed. He's ordering them. He was ordering them before, Jon said, voice hoarse. This is more. We gave him something, Davos said quietly. That horn, whatever magic was in it, he's taken it, same as he took the boy and the girl. We meant to bind dragons. We bound him tighter instead. Jon's gut twisted. He thought of Bran's frozen eyes under the weirwood root, of Daenerys screaming as that cold hand pressed to her head. The Night King was not just a spear of winter any longer. He was winter, threaded now with the memory of fire. The dead began to march again. The first ranks moved at a slow, measured pace, shields overlapping, bodies forming a living wall of rotted flesh and bone. Behind them, others carried clusters of limbs and torsos, hurling them forward to fall squirming in the shallow ditches and pits that had been dug before the city. Some moved ahead on all fours, a grotesque skirmish line of crawling death. Wait for it, Tyrion muttered under his breath, hands gripping the stone of the battlement until his knuckles went white. Let them commit. Let them fill the field. The wildfire pits lay hidden under a thin skin of frozen earth and scattered snow. Pyromancers huddled in carefully warded stone housings along the walls, each clutching a jar of glowing green liquid as if it were a child. Runners stood ready with torches. Now? A young captain asked, voice trembling. Not yet, Tyrion said. His eyes flicked to Jon. The man from the north stared fixedly at the advancing dead, jaw clenched. On Jon's other side, Sansa stood wrapped in a thick cloak of white fur, her breath a steady cloud. He hadn't heard her come up, but he wasn't surprised she was there. If we light it too far out, they'll find a way around, Tyrion said. We need them close enough that when it goes, it takes the bulk of them. And us? Jaime asked. We stand behind stone, Tyrion said, and pray wildfire likes them more than it likes us. It was a poor joke, but no one had the breath to laugh. The dead reached the first line of stakes, jagged spears hammered into the frozen ground. They pressed up against them without slowing. Bodies impaled themselves, hung there flailing or climbed over. Whites fell, got up again, pulled themselves free, left chunks behind. The line of stakes bent, snapped. Now, Tyrion said. The runners moved, lighting fuses that hissed and sputtered their way into the earth. For a long, breathless moment, nothing happened. Then the fields exploded. Green fire erupted from the hidden pits in great boiling fountains, hurling earth and ice and dead alike into the air. It cascaded in sheets and waves, clinging to anything it touched, eating flesh and bone and leather and iron with equal hunger. The heat struck the walls in a hammer blow, slapping faces and chests, baking the front rank of defenders in a sudden oven blast. The Whites shrieked. Their screams were unlike any living things, high, tearing sounds that cut at the ears. Those engulfed by wildfire flailed, flung burning limbs against their fellows, spreading the flames. The air filled with the stink of char, of burning hair and meat, of something older and fouler as whatever animated them reacted to the green blaze. On the wall, men cheered raggedly. The wildfire pits had been laid in overlapping rings. One by one they went up, ignited by their neighbors, joining into a rolling sea of green flame that stretched from city wall to horizon. For a moment the world was lit as if by some alien sun. The dead army vanished behind a curtain of emerald. Even the Night King disappeared. "Keep some in reserve," Tyrion shouted, voice hoarse. "Don't spend it all at once. They'll adjust." "How?" Sansa demanded, eyes fixed on the flames. "How do you adjust to that?" "He did at Winterfell," Jon said grimly. "Fire slows them. It doesn't stop him." "Then we make it hotter," Tyrion said. "We mix every trick we have with it. Oil, pitch, whatever dusty spell the Red Priests still remember. We. His words died in his throat. The wildfire shifted. At first it was subtle. The flames, which had leapt high and roared with hungry life, guttered slightly. The tops of the waves stuttering. Then, like a great beast inhaling, the entire sea of green fire seemed to draw in upon itself, pulling toward a single point somewhere near its center. "Do you see that?" Jaime whispered. The flames dipped, dimmed, fell inward. For a heartbeat, there was almost darkness, the sky above the field thick with greasy smoke. Then, a new light erupted. It was still green, and yet it wasn't. Veins of blue shot through the wildfire, racing outward from that unseen center like cracks racing through glass. Where the colors met, they twisted, hardened, blazed brighter than either had alone. The air shrieked as if in pain. The wildfire burned colder. A wave of blue-green flame rolled outward, lower to the ground now, clinging even more viciously. Earth froze solid where it had been scorched moments before. Bodies caught midway between burning and freezing went glassy, then shattered. The screams of the whites rose again, but now they were joined by new cries. Men on the outermost portions of the wall fell back clutching at their faces, flesh blistering not from heat but from something like frostbite inflicted in an instant. Armor rimed with hoarfrost that smoked green. A horse in the city below that had panicked and bolted toward the gate reared, its mane catching alight in ghostly blue-green. It became a brief, horrible torch before collapsing into a pile of cracked, frozen meat. "What did we do?" Davos whispered. "We mixed his cold with our fire," Tyrion said, voice tight. "We gave him exactly what Qyburn wanted." "That was not my intention," Qyburn murmured behind them, but his eyes shone with terrible fascination as the new flame spread. The Night King walked through it. He emerged from the heart of the blue-green inferno as he had from dragonfire, frost swirling around him. The flames bent away from him, not dying, but curving around his form, leaving a narrow corridor of clear space. His cloak, what was left of it, moved as if in a wind no one else could feel. He lifted one hand. The blue-green fire leapt higher on either side, forming a living wall that rushed outward toward the city. "Down!" Jon roared. The wave hit the outer defenses, rolling up against the walls like a tide. Stone steamed, then cracked, the mortar between blocks turning to powder. In some places the fire shot higher, licking at crenellations, reaching for the men huddled there. In others it froze solid, mid-curl, forming jagged crystal fans that remained burning with cold light. Catapults exploded as their bowstrings snapped under sudden frost. Scorpions froze in place. Men who had been too slow to duck rolled on the ground, armor fused to skin, eyes frozen open in masks of horror. It should have eaten everything. Instead, it stopped a few yards from the base of the wall, frozen in place, a jagged, glimmering moat of living crystal and fire. Anything that tried to cross it, an animal, a chunk of fallen masonry, a body, was seized, frozen, then burned to dust. "It's contained," Tyrion said faintly. "For now," Qyburn said, "until he finds another way to move it." "He'll move through the gap he left himself," Jon said. The Night King obliged. He walked slowly, unhurried, along the corridor of clear ground that wound through the twisted new fire. Behind him, his army followed, Rank upon rank of whites and white walkers, untouched by the flames on either side. Where the corridor met the base of the wall, the blue-green fire had formed a kind of arch, curling up and over to create a tunnel that led straight to the city's defenses. "He's cutting a road for himself," Jaime said. "Through our last line." "Archers!" a gold-cloaked captain cried. "Loose! Loose!" Arrows hissed down, dark streaks against the sick light. Most shattered on the Night King's armor, frozen mid-flight. A few struck whites behind him, pinning them momentarily before the walking corpses tore the shafts free and kept humming. A dragonglass-tipped arrow-gray worm himself had ordered loose toward that pale face cracked on an invisible wall of cold a foot from its mark. "We can't hold that," Davos said. "Not with arrows, not with stones. We need something else." "We have one thing left," Jon said. He looked south, toward the square where Drogon and Daenerys lay. On the ground, the dragon stirred again. The horn's call still echoed in his bones, but something colder had twined itself through that monster of Valyria now. Drogon's lungs burned with remembered fire and new frost. His mind was a battlefield, one part aching loyalty to the small, fragile shape pressed against his snout, another tugged by the horn's binding magic, a third brushed by something vaster and emptier that smelled of old ice and dead forests. Daenerys clung to him. She felt the Night King's attention like a weight on her skull, a thumb pressed against a bruise. His new senses twined with hers, pulling on memories, on instincts. Images flashed behind her eyes. Snow falling on a red door, dragonfire over Slaver's Bay, the shrieks of children in Astapor as she ordered the crucifixion of masters, the dark, cold eyes of the man who had just killed her brother in every sense that mattered to her. "I won't be yours," she whispered against Drogon's frozen scales. Her breath froze to his hide. "I won't be his pawn. Not again. Not this way." Her fingers sank into thick, chilled hide. "Dracarys," she whispered. The dragon shuddered. Drogon's eyes snapped fully open. They flared gold, the blue threads in them thinning, then thickening again as the Night King's pull strengthened. For a moment, the dragon's pupils slit, then widened, then fractured into something that was neither wholly beast, nor wholly the cold mind reaching for him. Daenerys hauled herself up. Her muscles felt leaden, her veins sluggish. Every breath was an effort, but she knew how to ride a dragon. Her body remembered even if her mind was half in someone else's palm. She pulled herself along Drogon's neck ridge by ridge, boots slipping on frost, fingers going numb on the spines. "Fly," she hissed through clenched teeth. "Fly." His wings unfurled. The torn membrane crackled as ice shattered along it. For a heartbeat, one wing refused to move properly, dead weight dragging them. Daenerys dug her heels into the place she had always kicked when she wanted altitude, when she wanted speed, when she wanted the world below to burn. Something inside Drogon answered her. He roared, shook his great head, scattering frost in a glittering cloud, and leapt. The sudden gust from his wings slammed into the surrounding square, knocking men from their feet, sending carts skidding. Sails snapped on ships in the harbor. In the Red Keep, Cersei lurched, catching herself on the arm of her throne as the world pitched. Drogon climbed into the bruised sky, claws gouging chunks from the tower he had lain beside. Pieces of stone rained down, crushing stalls and people alike. His wounded wing fought the air, stuttering, but he forced altitude, muscles straining. On the walls, every head turned. "There," Jon said. He had already been moving for the stairs when Drogon leapt. Now he ran outright, boots pounding, ghost at his heels. "Keep the wall manned. Hold as long as you can, Tyrion." "I'll keep them from panicking," the dwarf panted, already leaning over the parapet to shout orders. Or at least from panicking too loudly. Sansa caught Jon's arm as he passed her. "Don't die," she said. He almost smiled. "I did that already," he said. "Didn't take." He tore his arm free and plunged down the inner stair. Jaime hesitated. He should stay on the wall. He knew that. He was commander. Lannister by name, even if he no longer believed in what that name stood for. But his feet turned southward toward the heart of the city, toward the memory of a girl with green eyes and a cruel, frightened mouth. "Hold," he told Grey Worm. "If the wall falls, make them fight for every street. Don't let them break through in a rush. Give them alleys and corners and murder holes." Grey Worm nodded. "We are not afraid to die," the eunuch said. "I know," Jaime said. "Be afraid to fail instead." He left the wall for the last time and followed Jon into the city's guts. Above them, Drogon cut a ragged arc over the fields. The dragon's roar echoed over the dead army. Whites turned their hollow faces upward. White walkers raised their ice blades in salute or challenge. The Night King's head tilted back, the pale crown of his frozen horns gleaming in the blue-green firelight. Viserion rose from behind the army like a ghost. The undead dragon's wings, ragged and torn, still held enough integrity to beat. Frost trailed from his claws. He screamed, a sound that was only distantly kin to Drogon's roar, and climbed to meet his living brother. Drogon banked. The Night King's attention tugged at him through Daenerys' mind, through the horn's new-made channel. Memories of the last time he'd faced Viserion like this burned in Daenerys' head, hard snow underfoot, a night sky lit by dragon fire and blue flame. The horrible knowledge that she had lost one child already. She would not lose this one. "Higher," she urged. "Higher, ... Drogon climbed. The city dropped away beneath them, a ring of stone and smoke and fear. Beyond its walls stretched the warped field of blue-green fire and crystal, the dead army's front ranks moving steadily toward the gap. Beyond that, the world was a smear of gray and black, and the faint shimmer of the sea beginning to stiffen. Viserion lunged. Blue fire poured from his ruined throat, a jagged torrent that snapped and crackled with strange, cold lightning. Drogon twisted, years of sky battle instinct guiding him, and the blast missed his head by yards, freezing the air where he had been an instant before, forming a brief, glittering sculpture of flame caught mid-leap. "Now," Daenerys hissed. "Dracarys." Drogon exhaled. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then fire burst from his jaws in a column that was not the pure orange of old. Threads of green and blue twined through it, relics of wildfire and the Night King's touch. But at its heart was still heat. Real heat. The kind that had melted bells and flesh and stone in Meereen and King's Landing both. It slammed into Viserion's flank. The dead dragon shrieked, scales cracking, undead flesh blistering. Blue fire stuttered from his throat. One half-rotted wing seared away entirely, its skeletal strut snapping as it tried to catch non-existent air. Viserion spun out of control, trailing a comet tail of steam and cinders. "Below, on the wall," men shouted, pointing. Tyrion dared hope again. "She got him!" he cried. "Shah!" The Night King gestured. Viserion's fall slowed. Not entirely. The dragon still plummeted, wings flailing uselessly, but his descent changed from a tumble to a forced, ugly glide, as if invisible strings had seized him. He crashed into the blue-green moat before the walls, shattering crystal flame, sending shards and gouts of cold fire in every direction. The flames did not eat him. They flowed over his dead flesh, blue and green twining, then sank inward. Viserion's ruined body convulsed as if struck by lightning. For a heartbeat, his eyes guttered, the blue within them dimming. Then they flared, brighter than ever. When he rose again, he left a dragon-shaped cavity in the frozen, burning field. Drogon roared in defiance. They circled, living and dead. One wing torn, one wing scarred, breath steaming between them. On the wall, Qyburn whispered, "Magnificent." Inside the Red Keep, bells began to toll. Not for surrender this time, for the end of the world. Cersei stood at the window of her solar, watching dragons fight over a field of ghost fire. She had imagined dragons over this city once before, imagined them as her doom. Now she watched them as her last thin strand of hope, and the taste of it was bitter. "They'll tear each other apart," she said. "Yes," Qyburn murmured a few steps behind her. "If we are fortunate, they will take him with them when they fall. And if not, then at least they will make his victory costly." Cersei turned her head slightly. "You think in ledger books even as the world ends. A habit I see no reason to abandon, Your Grace," he said. She looked past the dragons to the field of ice and dead. The Night King moved steadily toward the breach, his army flowing around him like water around a rock. Wildfire and winter burned together in his wake. She thought of her children. Joffrey, lips purple, eyes bulging, clawing at his throat. Tommen, small body falling from the sept steps into green fire. Myrcella, pale and still, blood trickling from her nose as the ship rocked gently. All gone. The city remained. She had lied for so long, cheated, killed, carved her way through a maze of enemies and friends alike. The game was all she knew how to play. Now the board itself was freezing. "Summon the Golden Company to the inner gate," she said. "Tell them to hold it with their lives." "They are," Qyburn said delicately, "already doing so." "Then tell them they will be rewarded," she snapped. "With what, exactly?" Jaime asked from the doorway. She hadn't heard him enter. "With life," she said. He shook his head. "There'll be no life left to reward, Cersei. Not here. Not anywhere the dead can march. Then we stop them here." Her voice was flat. "Certain. And if we don't?" Jaime stepped closer. "If the walls fall, if the dead break through as they did at Winterfell, at every holdfast between here and there, then we make sure they find nothing of value," she said. "We burn the stores. We collapse the cellars. We make this city a grave they cannot use against us." "You would burn them all?" he asked. "Every man, woman, and child who still clings to life in these streets." "If I must," she said. He stared at her. He had once stabbed a king in the back for less. "I won't let you," he said. She smiled faintly. "You can't stop me." He spun on his heel and stalked out, golden hand clenched. He would not argue with her again. He would act. In the streets, the people of King's Landing had finally learned what winter meant. Snow fell now in thick, heavy flakes, blanketing roofs and alleys, muffling sound. Market stalls had been abandoned, their goods left to freeze. Fires burned in every doorway. Men and women huddled around them, clutching children, clutching knives. The smell of fear and smoke filled the air. The gold cloaks tried to hold the main thoroughfares, pushing people back from the gates, from the walls fire stores. They cracked skulls and swung clubs, but there were too many bodies and too little law left in the world. Red priests stood at street corners, arms raised, chanting in High Valyrian, flames dancing in their cupped hands. Some people knelt around them, others spat and pushed past. The priests' voices rose and fell, thin against the howl of a wind that wasn't truly wind at all. In Flea Bottom, a girl with tangled hair and mismatched eyes held her little brother's hand and stared at the sky, at the dragons like shards of darkness against the pale cloud. "Is it the end?" her brother asked. She squeezed his fingers. "No," she lied. "Not yet." Jon and Jaime pushed through those streets, flanked by a few of Grey Worm's Unsullied and a knot of Northmen whose faces were pinched with cold and disbelief at the wealth and misery packed so tight together. "The square," Jon panted. "We get to her. We keep Drogon in the air. If he goes down in the city." He didn't finish. They broke into the open space before the Sept's ruins just as Drogon swooped low, a blast of blue fire chasing him. The square was awash with steam, snow, and the bodies of those crushed or burned when the dragon had taken off. At its far end, through the mist, the shattered black skeleton of the Sept of Baelor loomed. "Mother have mercy," Jaime said under his breath. The last time he had stood here, the Sept had been whole. Drogon climbed again, passing overhead in a rush of wings, sending everyone in the square staggering under the gust. Viserion followed, his dead eyes blazing, frost trailing from his tattered feathers of wing. Daenerys clung to the saddle, soaked in sweat that froze on her leathers, hair plastered to her skull. "Higher," she whispered again, though her lips were numb. Just a little higher. The Night King watched them from below, head tilted back. He didn't need to kill Drogon now. He wanted him, a piece of fire in his hand. But he needed him weakened, as he had been at Winterfell. He needed Daenerys while chipped away. He reached along the horns line, through the stolen knot of her memories. He pulled. Daenerys' breath caught. Her fingers spasmed. For a heartbeat, she saw not kings landing below her, but Meereen in flame. Children screaming in a tongue she half understood. For another, she saw a tall man with a kind smile and tired eyes. Jorah falling from a gray, blasted hill, whites dragging him down. For another, she saw Jon turning away from her in a dark room. His face closed, his words a blur of duty and blood. The dragon faltered. Viserion surged upward, blue fire searing the air between them. "No!" Jon shouted. He had Longclaw in his hands. The blade felt heavier than ever, its familiar weight transformed by the knowledge that it had failed before. But steel that had once slain White Walkers could do so again, if he could only reach the one that mattered. "Jon!" Davos' voice came from behind him. "We have to get you to the gate, not the sky." "The gate won't matter if he takes Drogon," Jon snapped. "The walls won't matter. Nothing will." He plunged toward the mouth of the old dragon pit tunnels. Jaime grabbed his arm. "You're not the only one who gets to be stupidly brave," the Kingslayer said. "You go for the beast. I'll go for the bitch." "No." Jon blinked. "Cersei's about to burn her own city," Jaime said. "Again. Someone has to stop her. Someone who knows where she hides her wildfire toys." Jon nodded once. "Then go," he said. "Good luck." Jaime almost said, "And to you." He didn't. He turned and ran toward the Red Keep. Jon plunged into the tunnels. The air inside them was thick with smoke and old dragon stink. Heat still lingered here, a ghost of the days when 3 great beasts had roamed these halls. Now only one lived, winging overhead, and even he carried frost in his bones. Jon ran through the half-dark, ghost bounding at his side, claws clicking on stone. He didn't have a plan beyond get higher. He didn't have anything beyond that, and a sword. 60 heartbeats later, he burst out onto a narrow ledge halfway up the hillside, the city spread out below him in a dizzying sweep. The wall of blue-green fire ringed it, the field of dead beyond it, the dragons above, twisting around one another like fighting crows. He sucked in a breath that burned and stepped to the edge. "Come on," he muttered to himself. "Come on, you bastard. Just a little lower." "Nun." Drogon and Viserion slammed together. Claws raked scales, fangs snapped, wings tangled. They tumbled through the air in a snarling knot, tails lashing, sending shards of ice and embers spiraling down like deadly confetti. Blue fire blasted into Drogon's shoulder, freezing flesh that had been burned moments before. Orange-green fire seared Viserion's ribcage, exposing bone that smoked and froze. They dropped. For a moment, it seemed they would smash into the city. Men in the streets screamed and scattered. Bells swung wildly in their towers. Then Drogon ripped free with a convulsive heave, wings beating in panicked rhythm. Viserion spun away, one wing nearly shredded, blue fire gouting from the holes in his chest. He righted himself by sheer weight and unnatural will, trailing chunks of himself as he circled. Drogon swooped lower, one wing dipping. Daenerys clung hard, vision spotting. The Night King's pull was relentless. Jon's voice, calling her name from that godswood, seemed very far away now. The memory of his hand in hers, of the heat of his skin, of the muddle of love and obligation and anger, slipped from her grasp like water. She felt cold fingers brushing the edges of her thoughts. "You burn cities for less," that cold seemed to say. "Why not burn this one for everything?" For a heartbeat, she saw King's Landing as she had seen it once before in the House of the Undying. Not broken by her fire, but roofless, full of snow. Now it was both. Rubble and frost. The red keep stood like a jagged tooth in a dead mouth. "This was never yours," the cold said. "Take what you can. End what you cannot own." She almost listened. Then a sound cut through the swirling fog in her mind. It was not a horn. It was a howl. Ghost's cry rose from the hillside below, long and full of savage defiance. It cut across the field, across the city, up into the sky. Drogon's head jerked. For a heartbeat, Jon's direwolf's voice sounded like another dragon's. For another, it sounded like all the wolves of the north crying at once. A sound that had once meant something to the magic that flowed through the Weirwoods before it had been stolen. The Night King's attention wavered. Not much, but enough. Daenerys seized it. "Look at me," she whispered, teeth chattering. "Look at me, you cold bastard." She dragged up every memory of warmth she had left. The heat of the pyre that hadn't burned her. The feel of sun on her skin in the red waste. The first time Drogon's scales had warmed under her hand. The laughter of her dragons as they tumbled around her boat in Slaver's Bay. She threw them at that cold presence like stones. The Night King did not flinch, but for a heartbeat, Drogon's eyes cleared. "Now," Daenerys whispered. "Dracarys." They were close enough now that Jon felt the brush of wind from Drogon's wings. He saw Daenerys' pale hair whipping, her eyes like chips of amethyst rimmed with frost, fixed on some point he couldn't see. He saw the ragged craters in Drogon's hide, the way his tail dragged. He saw Viserion circling, blue fire building in his throat. He did the only thing left to do. He jumped. He leaped from the ledge as Drogon passed, fingers outstretched. He caught a spine with his right hand, missed with his left, swung, almost fell. Ghost howling below him. The city spinning. For a heartbeat, he hung from the dragon's neck ridge by one hand, arm wrenching in its socket. Then another hand caught his wrist. Daenerys' grip was ice cold, but strong. "You're mad," she hissed, hauling him up behind her. "So are you," he gasped, throwing his other arm over the spine. "We always have been. Now listen to me." He didn't get to finish. Viserion screamed and dove. Blue fire rushed toward them, filling Jon's world. He wrapped his arms around Daenerys without thinking, trying to shield her with his body, as if his flesh could stop the cold that had eaten dragons and walls and gods would both. Drogon banked hard, wings straining, but he was too slow, too wounded. The blue flame hit his tail and hindquarters. It should have frozen him solid, as it had once frozen the wall. Instead, it met something new in his flesh. Frostfire and wildfire and dragonflame collided. The blast flared white. Drogon's scream was like nothing Jon had ever heard. A sound of pure agony and fury, echoed a heartbeat later by Viserion's hollow roar as the backlash struck him as well. The world became light and pain and the smell of scorched air. When Jon's vision cleared, they were falling. Drogon's wings thrashed sluggishly, muscles spasming. Great chunks of him had gone white and glassy, patches along his tail and back glimmering with that same blue-green crystalline fire that ringed the city. It burned inward, eating him from the outside and the inside both. "Hold on!" Daenerys shouted. Though there was nothing to hold but dying dragon, they were not falling straight down. The Night Kings will still tugged at Drogon, that horn-formed line pulling, guiding. He dragged the dragon's tumbling bulk toward the city's heart, toward the wide square and the red keep beyond. If Drogon fell there, half the city would go with him. "Pull him away!" Jon shouted over the shriek of wind and dragon and breaking stone. "Toward the river, the sea!" "I can't," Daenerys rasped. Blood trickled from her nose, freezing before it could fall. Her fingers sank into scales slick with frost and blood. He's inside his head, Jon, and mine. "Then let me in," Jon said, and he didn't know what he meant until he said it. He remembered Melisandre's hand on his chest, remembered cold spreading through his veins, remembered staring up at a wooden ceiling and gasping like a man who had been underwater too long. He remembered the Godswood's pulsing, the way the Weirwood's face had watched him. He remembered Ghost's howl echoing in some space that wasn't entirely physical. He reached, not with his hands, with whatever it was that had climbed back from the dark with him that night on the wall. For a heartbeat he felt Drew. No, Drogon's mind, huge and hot and afraid, flailing against bonds of cold. He felt Daenerys, a knot of fury and loss and stubborn love wrapped around a shard of pure, blinding purpose. He felt, faintly, the Night King, distant but inexorable, a glacier grinding down mountain and valley alike. He shoved. "Not here," he thought, or shouted, or prayed. "Not on them. Not like this. You want me? Take me." He had no right to offer that. No certainty that it would be accepted. No bargaining chip but his own strange half-life. The Night King's attention shifted. For the first time, Jon felt it fully, unmasked by Bran's mind or Daenerys' memories. It was vast. It was old. It was cold in ways that made the worst northern winter feel like a mild breeze. It was a hunger not for flesh, but for the end of hunger, for stillness, for the silence that follows when every song has been sung to death. It brushed over Jon's soul like a hand over grain. Then it closed. Drogon twisted. His fall shifted, the angle of descent changing. He clawed at the air, eyes rolling, one wing half frozen, the other blazing with blue-green fire. Jon clung to Daenerys and the dragon's spine both, teeth gritted. The city rushed up at them. Instead of smashing into the square, Drogon clipped the corner of the Red Keep. Stone exploded. A tower leaned, groaned, then toppled, collapsing into the streets below. The shock flung Jon and Daenerys from the saddle. They spun through the air, the world a blur of sky and stone and fire. Jon hit something hard. The impact knocked a sense from him. For a moment, there was nothing but white and ringing and a taste like copper. When he blinked his eyes open, he was lying in a mound of rubble, snow and dust settling around him. His ribs screamed with every breath. His left leg pulsed with a deep, ugly ache. Ghost stood over him, snarling, teeth bared. His white fur was streaked with blood that might have been his own or 100 others. It steamed briefly, then froze. "Daenerys," Jon croaked. The dire wolf looked away, ears flattening. Drogon lay half on the smashed remains of the Red Keep's outer wall, half in the collapsed courtyard. His body still twitched, occasional spasms sending shards of crystal and stone flying. Blue-green fire chewed steadily through him from tail to head, eating ribs, spine, muscle. Daenerys lay a few yards from his neck. She had hit the ground hard, one arm bent at a sickening angle. Blood stained the snow beneath her head in a spreading halo that froze as Jon watched. Her chest moved shallowly, breath frosting the air. Jon tried to stand. His leg wouldn't take his weight. He fell to one knee, sucking in a breath that burned his lungs. He used Longclaw as a crutch, shoving its point into the frozen ground, and dragged himself toward her. A shadow fell over them. He looked up. The Night King stood on a chunk of shattered wall above. The city spread out behind him. Streets white with snow and dark with blood, towers cracked, bells silent. Blue-green fire reflected in his eyes. Frost clung to his armor. His hands were empty. Bran's face flickered behind his features for an instant, like a reflection in a cracked mirror. Daenerys blinked. Her eyes focused on the figure above them. Her lips pulled back from her teeth in a soundless snarl. "Not like this," she whispered. "I won't be. Yours." The Night King stepped down from the broken wall. He did not hurry. He walked through the drifting snow as if through a garden, each step cracking stone, freezing earth. He stopped a few feet from Daenerys, looking down at her with that same blank inevitability. Jon planted Longclaw in front of him. He stood, swaying, putting everything left in him into keeping his feet. Ghost snarled at his side, hackles raised. "Not her," Jon said. "Not again." The Night King regarded him. He had seen this man before. On the wall. At Hardhome. In the Godswood at Winterfell. A thread ran through those meetings. Thin but stubborn, refusing to break. He extended one hand. Not toward Daenerys. Toward Jon.e. The air between them went still. Jon felt ice wrap around his heart, around the old scar at his chest. The mark the Red Woman had kissed with fire pulsed once, weakly, then dimmed. The breath caught in his throat. He remembered Sam's laugh, Arya's quick grin, Sansa's stubborn jaw, Ned's hand on his shoulder, Ghost's fur against his palm. He remembered standing on the wall, feeling the cold wind and thinking it was all he would ever know. He took a step forward. "Don't," Davos croaked from somewhere to the side. "Lad, don't." "If he takes me," Jon rasped. "Maybe he lets the city live." "That's not what he does," Davos said. "He doesn't bargain." "He took Bran," Jon said. "He took Daenerys. Maybe if there's something of me in him." He didn't finish. There was no sense to it. No logic. Only a desperate, flailing attempt to find a way to matter in the face of the end. He stepped closer. The Night King's hand came down. Daenerys moved. With a sound somewhere between a sob and a snarl, she rolled, shattered arm trailing uselessly, and snatched at something half buried in the snow beside her. A shard of dragon glass, broken from her shattered sword in the Godswood, glinted briefly as her fingers closed around it. She drove it upward with all the strength she had left. The Night King's hand flicked aside. He caught her wrist with that same impossible speed, frost crawling up her skin beneath his fingers. The shard of glass stopped inches from his chest. He had known this trick once. A girl leaping at his back with a hidden blade. A desperate, stabbing hope. He would not be surprised that way again. He squeezed. Daenerys screamed as bones snapped, the dragonglass falling from her suddenly limp fingers. It struck the frozen ground and cracked in two. The Night King let go. She sagged back, chest heaving. Jon took another step forward, heart hammering. "Take me," he rasped. "Leave her. Leave them. Take me." The Night King tilted his head. He did not understand the offer. Not because he could not comprehend sacrifice. He remembered dimly the man he had once been bound to a tree, screaming as ice was thrust into his chest. But because the concept of granting mercy, in exchange for it, was foreign. Mercy was a warmth, and warmth was what he had been made to erase. He touched Jon anyway. His fingers brushed the scar over Jon's heart. Cold plunged inward. For a heartbeat, Jon felt everything. He saw the first long night. Forests hammered flat under glaciers, cities swallowed by advancing ice. He saw the children of the forest drive a dagger of dragonglass into a man's chest beneath a heart tree, watched blue light flower in his eyes. He saw centuries of snow and stillness broken by brief, foolish summers. He saw men forgetting, breaking wards, cutting trees, killing magic. He saw himself, walking through countless winters, killing and raising and marching. He saw Bran's memories, Daenerys' dreams, every raven's flight, every snowflake that had ever fallen on Westeros. He saw the sun dim, not just behind clouds. In truth, he saw a sky where the pale disk was smaller, farther, its light thin and gray, its warmth unable to pierce the growing shell of cold encasing the world. He saw oceans stiffen, not at the surface but to the depths. He saw rivers become roads. He saw men try to outrun the cold and fail. He saw an end to change. It was terrible. It was beautiful. He could stop it. He could stop him. All he had to do was... The cold snapped shut. Jon's knees buckled. He hit the ground hard, long claw clattering from numb fingers. His breath came in short, shallow gasps, each one a knife. His vision tunneled, black creeping in from the edges. The Night King let go. He had looked under Jon's skin and seen noise. Heat. Bah. Pow. Love. Guilt. Anger. Too much motion, too many threads. It was not something he could use, not as he had used Bran's sight or Daenerys' memories. It was a flicker of fire in a world that had already been marked for ice. He turned away. Jon collapsed fully, cheek pressing into the frozen snow, watching through dimming eyes as the Night King stepped over him and moved toward the Red Keep's throne room. Daenerys lay still. Her eyes followed the pale figure for a moment. Then they shifted to Jon. "You stupid." She coughed, a fleck of blood freezing on her lip. "Wolf." He forced a smile. "You're welcome," he managed. Behind them, the walls finally cracked. The blue-green fire that had formed the moat surged inward, ice breaking, crystal walls shattering. It poured into the breaches the dead had carved, flowing down streets, eating stone and flesh alike. Whites poured after it, climbing over twisted crystal, surging into houses and halls. On the inner gate, the Golden Company broke. They had been good soldiers. They had held ranks against men and horses and elephants across half a world. They had never faced an army that did not stop, did not tire, did not fear. When the first whites reached their line and did not fall under spear and sword as men did, their discipline wavered. When the blue-green fire flowed among them, freezing armor to flesh, burning teeth from jaws, it shattered. They died in neat lines that did them no good. Clegane met his brother on the steps of the Red Keep. The mountain had stood there, a looming, silent figure in necrotic armor. For most of the battle, a drawn sword in his massive hand, awaiting any who would dare approach the Queen. When the dead flooded the lower courts, Qyburn had screamed for him to retreat, to guard the inner halls instead. He had not moved until Sandor shouted his name. "Sir Gregor," the hound bellowed, trudging up the stairs through snow and blood. "Come on, you big pile of shite. End of the world, finally. Time we finish this." The mountain turned. His face was a ruin. The last vestige of whatever had once been human there had rotted away long ago. His eyes glowed faintly under the helm's slit. Not blue like the dead, but not warm either. A mockery of life. White surged behind Sandor, clawing at his back, grabbing at his legs. He turned, slashed them down with his sword, kicked another away. "Not yet," he snarled. "He's mine." Fire burned in the lower halls, wildfire caches cracking and leaking. Ice crawled down from the towers. The world was ending around them. The Clegane brothers met in the middle of the stairs. Sandor had never truly believed in gods. He'd spat at septons and priests alike. But as he hacked at his brother's massive form, as he dodged slow, bone-crushing blows that shattered stone where they landed, he felt something like fate wrap around them. He drove his sword into the chink between breastplate and gorget. It stuck for a heartbeat, then slid in. The mountain grunted. Then he grabbed the blade with one hand, ignoring the way it cut his palm, and ripped it out, flinging it aside. Sandor laughed, high and a little wild. "Of course," he spat. "Why would you stay dead?" He dropped his empty sword hand to his belt, fingers closing around the hilt of a dagger he'd taken from a dead Northman. Dragon glass, black and translucent. He hadn't believed in that either. He drove it into his brother's helm. It sank through iron, through bone, through whatever Qyburn had left where brain should be. For a heartbeat, the mountain's eyes flared with blue light. Then they went out. Gregor Clegane toppled backward, crashing down the steps, smashing monsters and men alike. His armor froze as he fell, ice racing over it, locking him in place. He came to rest half in a pool of blue-green fire, half out, a grotesque statue. Sandor stood over him, chest heaving. "Die," he said. "Stay dead." A wave of fire and ice surged up the steps. Sandor smiled, crooked and tired. "Oh, fuck it," he said, and went to meet it. In the throne room, the Iron Throne looked almost modest. The great chair of twisted swords, once so imposing, now sat in a hall dimmed by smoke and frost. Icicles hung from the melted dragon skulls above. The great windows were half shattered, snow blowing in around edges of broken glass. The floor was slick with a thin sheet of ice. Cersei stood at the foot of the throne. She had sent Qyburn to trigger the last of the wildfire caches under the city, to turn the Red Keep itself into a green inferno if the dead breached its gates. She had sent what remained of her guards to hold the inner corridors. She stood alone now. The hall's great doors groaned. Snow blew in as they opened. The Night King walked in. He left a trail of frost with each step, veins of ice cracking through the floor, racing toward the throne. Snow fell inside the hall, eddies swirling around sword points and broken flagstones. Cersei's fingers tightened on the arm of the throne. "You win," she said, voice level. "I suppose someone had to." He stopped at the base of the dais. They stared at each other for a long moment. In some other world, she might have spoken to him as she had to every man who'd come into this hall seeking something. Parried with words, offered deals, bartered lives. She might have offered him the city in exchange for her own survival. Might have tried to play a game with death. But there was nothing in those blue eyes to bargain with. He was not a rival king. He was the end of kings. Cersei climbed the steps slowly. Her feet slipped once on the ice, but she caught herself. She turned at the top and looked down at him, then over his pale head to the blasted windows, to the sky beyond, where dragons still twisted weakly. "I was born in the end," she said. "The last child of my father. The last queen to sit this throne. I burned my enemies. I killed my friends. I lied and cheated and did every foul thing I had to, because I believed I had time to enjoy what I won. She laughed, a small, cracked sound. "I was wrong." The Night King said nothing. He lifted a hand. Ice raced up the throne. It flowed over the twisted swords, encasing them, smoothing their edges. The seat froze, growing higher, more jagged, crystalline spikes rising from it. The iron chair became an icicle made of weapons, a glittering monument to power rendered meaningless. Cersei reached out and touched the arm of the throne. Her fingers froze to it immediately. She did not pull back. "Do it," she whispered. "But know this, I was here first." He touched her forehead. Her body froze from the top down, encased in clear ice that spread over her features, trapping her expression in a mix of defiance and weary resignation. Her hair stiffened, her lashes crusted. Frost crawled down her neck, into her chest. When it reached her heart, she shuddered once, then stopped. The Night King let go. She remained seated on the throne, a pale statue on a frozen chair in a dead hall. He turned away. He had never wanted thrones. He wanted silence. Outside, the last pockets of resistance died. Grey Worm fought until his arms refused to lift his spear. The Unsullied around him fell one by one, their disciplined ranks crumbling under sheer numbers. He backed into an alley, speared 3 more whites, then went down under a pile of frozen hands. Tyrion led a knot of refugees through the old tunnels under the city, Davos at his side, Sansa behind them, clutching a bundle that was someone's child. They could feel the cold pressing down, seeping through stone. "We can get to the river," Davos panted. "There'll be boats. There's always boats. Even when there shouldn't be." "No." "Boats to where?" Sansa asked. "To wherever the snow isn't yet," he said. "Dorne," Tyrion said. "Or the Stormlands, or further. The dead can't march across all the seas at once." "You don't know that," Sansa said. "No," Tyrion said. "But I don't intend to be here to find out." They burst from a postern gate onto the Blackwater's bank. The river was half frozen, sheets of ice drifting on its surface, grinding against each other. A few small boats bobbed at makeshift piers, men shoving women and children aboard, shouting, shoving away whites that clawed the air behind them. Go, Davos said. Get on. I'll find something bigger if I can. Get more folk out. You're not coming? Sansa asked. Someone has to stay and light the bloody fuse if those last caches don't go off when they should, he said. I've always been good with fuses. Tyrion's hand caught his arm. You've done enough, the imp said. So have you, Davos said. Doesn't mean we're done yet. He pulled free and vanished back into the tunnels. Tyrion and Sansa got onto one of the boats, Ghost leaping aboard at the last moment with a snarl. The craft rocked dangerously under the direwolf's weight, but the men within made space, eyes wide at the sight of the beast. Row, Sansa said. The oars bit into the freezing water. They pulled away from the shore, away from the city that had been the center of their world for so long, now a silhouette of jagged towers and falling snow, lit from within by blue-green light. From a distance, King's Landing looked almost peaceful. The last bells fell silent. The sixth wave of ice rolled south. The fall of King's Landing did not stop the dead. If anything, it hastened them. The wildfire caches Cersei had set to destroy the city's stores and cellars went off piecemeal, some triggered by White's blundering into fuses, others by Davos' careful hand before he died. Green flame erupted from sewers and streets, consuming pockets of dead and living alike. The Night King walked through it all. The blue-green hybrid flame he had birthed from their weapons, and has now flowed behind him in great rivers, freezing and burning the land in equal measure. It rolled over fields and farmsteads, over forests and rivers, leaving behind a landscape of crystal and ash. The rose rad became a white scar. The Reach, once the breadbasket of the realm, froze. Fields of wheat turned to glassy, brittle stalks that shattered at a touch. Vineyards stiffened, grapes turning to beads of ice on the vine. The Mander slowed, its broad waters thickening, then hardening entirely. Highgarden fell without a siege. Its lords were already dead. Its walls meant nothing. The dead flowed through its gardens, their pale eyes reflecting blue-green light. The golden roses on its banners iced over, petals crumbling. Old Town held longer. The Citadel had books. The Archmaesters had turned their minds to the problem early, quills scratching, scrolls being dragged from dusty shelves. They had peered into glass candles that flickered fitfully, had read accounts of the long night until ink blurred before their eyes. They had sent ravens full of words. Words turned to ice when the cold came. The Hightower's great beacon burned bright as the sun the day the dead appeared on the horizon, a last defiant flare. Ships crowded Old Town's harbor, trying to load as many as possible before the sea froze entirely. Red priests from Volantis stood on the quays, arms raised, flames dancing around them. When the dead reached the city's walls, the Maesters unleashed what they had. They had gathered every scrap of knowledge of fire and light, of obsidian and salt, of old Valyria and older children's magic, and woven it into a single desperate spell. Men on the walls watched a column of pure white light lance upward from the top of the Hightower. It struck the sky. For a heartbeat, the clouds parted. The sun shone down, pale but real. The dead halted. Frost stopped spreading. Blue flames flickered uncertainly. Whites at the front of the army smoked, their flesh steaming, their movements slowing. The Maesters and Red Priests cried out in triumph. They had made the sun stronger, they thought. They had not. They had burned the last of it. The white column flickered, then drew inward, sucking the light it had called into itself. The sun dimmed, its pale disk shrinking in the sky as if retreating. The Hightower's beacon flared bright enough to blind, then went dark. The world grew colder. The Night King stepped forward again. The spell had not stopped him. It had only taken another step toward the end he sought. Old Town fell under ice that did not melt. In Dorne, the princes watched the sky dim with growing unease. The sands turned hard under unexpected frost, dunes freezing, shifting in slow, grinding slides. The desert, which had always seemed eternal in its heat, now felt fragile. Wells froze from the bottom up. Palms blackened. They barricaded their passes, thinking the mountains would protect them. The dead did not need passes. They marched along the frozen seas, around the coasts, across bays turned solid. They came at Sunspear from the waterside, walking over what had once been surf. They climbed the smooth frozen stone where once no man could have found purchase. Obara Sand led the last charge. She died with her spear in a white walker's chest, dragging it down even as frost took her. The seventh wave crossed the narrow sea. Men in Bravos had watched the fall of Westeros with growing dread. The Titan, which had stood watch over the harbor for centuries, had seen ships come in full and leave empty, had watched red priests and maesters argue on its stone shoulders, had listened to the mutter of prayers in 100 tongues. The faceless men had read the signs in quieter places. They had known death was coming. They had not truly understood that it was the only God that would remain. When the sea froze between east and west, when the shivering sea and narrow sea became a single cracked sheet of ice from the Bay of Seals to Tyrosh, the dead marched again. They did not need ships. They walked under the Titan's legs, their pale faces turned toward the city of canals and secrets. Arrows rained down from the great stone giant's eyes, but they fell short, cracking on the ice. Firepots burst among the front ranks, burning a few, slowing none. The dead waded into the canals, their bodies displacing water that froze around them. Gondolas became coffins. The House of Black and White's doors ice shut from the inside as the many-faced god's last servants prepared for a world where his faces would mean nothing. In Volantis, the red temple burned. The high priests called down Auror's fire until their bodies were ash. Great pillars of flame rose from the city, scorching sky and earth alike. For a time, the dead could not approach, their bones cracking under the heat, their eyes boiling in their skulls. The Night King did not need to take Volantis. He walked around it, leaving it as a lone island of flickering red in a sea of expanding blue. When the priests died, the city died with them. It took longer for the last lights to go out in the far south and the high east. There were hidden valleys where the cold came slower, caves where heat seeped from the earth, warding off frost. Men and women hid there, clutching candles, telling tales of summers their children had never seen. In one such valley, a girl with hair the color of old straw sat by a thin fire, listening to an old man speak. And then, he rasped, the wolves came down from the north with their banners snapping, and the dragons flew overhead, and the snow melted on their fire. They say the sword he carried glowed like a star. They called him the prince that was promised, and they said he would... Did he? The girl asked. The old man stared into the flames. No, he said at last. He didn't, but he tried. The girl hugged her knees. Why are you telling me this, if it didn't work? She asked. Because stories are what we have left, he said. Stories and each other. The cold can take the world. It can take the sun. But if you remember that once there were summers, that once there were kings and queens and fools who thought they could change the end. He smiled, thin and bitter. Then it hasn't taken everything. The fire flickered. Its light was thin. Outside the cave, the snow lay deep. The sky above was a uniform gray, the sun a memory. The blue-green glow on the horizon grew a little brighter each day as the rivers of frozen fire crept closer. On a hill that had once been a weirwood grove, now a forest of ice-sculpted stumps, the Night King stood. He looked out over a world that was almost quiet. There were still pockets of heat, places where men and women huddled, places where fires burned stubbornly, places where the earth itself still resisted freezing. He would find them. He would walk until there was nowhere left to walk. In his mind, Bran's old pathways lay quiet. There were no more ravens to ride, no more trees to see through. The Weirwood network was a lattice of frozen veins now, memory locked in ice. Daenerys' dreams had gone still as well. No more dragons tumbled through her sleep. Drogon lay as a half-melted, half-frozen carcass on the ruined Red Keep, his skull already a home for whites. Jon's brief flare had gone out. Somewhere under the snow that had swallowed King's Landing, his bones lay with 1,000 others, indistinguishable. The Night King listened. The wind did not move. The world's heart slowed. The last summer was a story an old man told a child in a cave at the edge of the dying world. Soon, even that would be silent. Snow began to fall again, fine and steady. The Night King took one more step south, though there was nowhere south left to go. He did not stop. He never would.